welcome to ET Studios presents Future Brands of India in association with ET Retail. I'm Himanshi Tiwari and today our guest is none other than the brains behind FS Life, the queen of workwear herself, Ayushi Gudwani. Ayushi, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much to have me.
It's brilliant. Ayushi, I must say, in the midst of a lot of international brands who are dominating the workwear scene, it's quite refreshing to see an Indian brand, bringing in that personalized touch to the Indian audience. So, congrats for that.
Thank you, thank you.
And also, please tell me the transition from FableStreet to FS Live. What is this all about?
That's a long story, but to keep it very short, I started as FableStreet. FableStreet started also as a workwear brand to compete with all the international brands, as you said so, but there was a core essence of great fits missing for Indian bodies. And then the idea behind the same was to be able to build that for Indian women and create a brand around it. During COVID, we transitioned from one brand to multiple brands because fundamentally, we also realized that there are a lot more other unmet needs and underserved needs in the apparel space as large. And therefore, FableStreet still exists. It's one of our largest brands. But organizationally, we are now called FS Life. And there are two more brands in the portfolio, Pink Fort, which is a modern Indian wear brand, and March, a fine silver jewelry brand.
All right, then when did you realize that the time is ripe to introduce a fashion, workwear scene in the market?
I think time is always ripe, but when I decided to leave my previous job, I was contemplating whether it is the right time to enter into the space or not. And back in 2016, I realized that despite the fact that there are a lot of Western brands that are rare in the country, it is still a critical unmet need to solve for sizing. And since there was none doing so, I just took on the chance to do so and then get into that space.
All right, it's brilliant to see, you're bringing in personalized yet practical workwear scene in the market, and also you're the advocate of pockets. So, 5 more points for that.
Pockets always.
Yeah. And now please help me understand if there were any challenges for you that you faced when you started this brand.
Everyone faces challenges, so there are quite a lot of them. But I think to start with, the first thing is that the market is really, really cluttered. So while, so how do you stand out is one of the core challenges for us. That was fits. So you need to be serving a critical unmet need. So whether it is fits and all the functionalities that you talk about. So that was one critical area. And in terms of building, so I would say two aspects of the challenges. One was getting that first set of team right. I come from a non-fashion background, and also we wanted to set up a non-fashion team because we were trying to innovate on product in a different manner. It hasn't been done in the past. So getting that team right. And then second was solving for fits, and it isn't trivial. Solving for fits means a lot of analytics, measuring women, etc., and then translating that technically into a garment construction, so which is not easy.
Yeah, but you've always been with a business mindset, right?
Absolutely.
Right. On that note, there has been a lot of evolution in terms of technology. E-commerce has come in, and COVID actually accelerated a lot of e-commerce for India, right? So e-commerce technology or D2C technology, how are you leveraging these kinds of technology to kind of understand the consumer preferences and also bring that specific or personalized product line for the consumers?
So I want to divide it in two parts. The first is overall technology, right? The primary, we are a brand first, but for us to be able to launch more efficiently, the primary channel was e-commerce, right? So that itself has been a core enabler to be able to launch a brand with limited resources. So I think that's the first part. Now it's a done and dated thing, been running for years, right, for any brand. And to answer your second question around the consumer preferences, right? You have to be massively data backed, which all these tech and tools that you work with, both in terms of your sales channel as well as in terms of your perf marketing channels, allow you to stay very, very close to the consumer and understand their preferences. So that becomes one thing. And at the same time, I also feel that there is there has to be a lot more nuanced understanding of consumer, and that may or may not be tech-led. So we also have a customer insights team, which is very close to the consumer and consistently keeps in check with them on what they are looking for and how do we evolve. Trying to genuinely understand what are the emotions they are feeling, which tech cannot capture.
All right, so we are not doing away with the human element because that is essential for any business to thrive. On that note, Ayushi, please help me understand how this technology kind of supports you in the whole value chain process.
So for us, actually, I mean, it's a great question. For us, the core innovation lies in the supply chain side of building this brand. If you understand apparel as a space, the biggest issue that apparel faces is high inventory problem. And therefore, building a very lean and an efficient supply chain is what we have done, and that is the core innovation for us. And that can only be done if you have tech in place. So we do just-in-time manufacturing, and then we do very fast inventory build-up in 2 weeks, and all of that is completely enabled by technology in terms of how we execute it. We are dealing with 5,000 styles with quantities anywhere between 1 to 500. So if you were dealing with those kinds of complexities without leveraging some amount of algorithms or tech, you can't deliver on that. But again, we can't miss the human element. The actual manufacturing still happens.
All right. All right, you also have entered into the brick and mortar spaces, right? So what is that all about?
We always wanted to enter into brick and mortar spaces. The premise of FableStreet that exists and FS Life overall is that we are building brands. Brands deserve consumer love and have to be channel agnostic. E-commerce is a well-established channel, but brick and mortar was always a critical channel for us.
Having an omni-channel.
Yes, so we were always wanting to be omni-channel. It was only finding the right time to enter into it. We have scaled massively. Therefore, it was the right time to get into offline space.
So for you, what has been more profitable, e-commerce or brick and mortar?
In today's world, brick and mortar is more profitable than online. Yes, online the cost of acquisition has shot up with so many brands springing up, etc., and it becoming a very easy play to enter into. Brick and mortar is by design therefore more profitable and also gets you very close to the consumer.
All right. And talking about your products, diversity and inclusion is also a very important part of it. So how do you bring those aspects into your product offerings?
So first thing, we are a brand for real women. We started and we were always size agnostic. We would offer custom tailoring and clothing to everyone. So it was by design inclusive. You're looking at me, I'm an extra large size and I've always been like this. So the idea has always been to service all sizes and shapes, and that's how we started. That is the core proposition for the brand. So I would say that, inclusivity is in our DNA, and that's how we operate. This also translates into inclusivity and diversity in our DNA of how we run the organization. We have 60% of women in workforce, we have 70% of women in leadership, we have 3% representation of LGBTQ community in our organization. So that's who we are and how we ensure that we are building a really diverse and inclusive space.
But tell me, what goes into understanding what consumers want?
Very long thing, right? But we touched a little bit about it. You have to thoroughly play a lot with the data and analytics around it in terms of, and there is unlimited available, consideration to conversion to what's selling, what's not selling, everything, there's a lot. So I think that is a very interesting enabler to start with. But again, as I said, you do need to be very close to the consumer, probably conduct a lot more of deep structured interviews to finally touch upon the nerve in terms of the emotions that you have to deal with and what you are serving for. In our case, when we talk about FableStreet, we realize over time that, great clothing translates into comfortable mindset and an effortless clothing for women, and it translates into confidence and stress-free morning to evening behavior for women, right? So that is the emotion we want to touch, and that's how you have to build your engine around it. And we are consistently listening to the consumers to be able to deliver that.
All right, so if you have to sum up in 3 or 4 words, like what are those top 3 or 4 things that women want in fashion brands?
Style, comfort, fit. Fit is actually primary. And then I would say stress-free clothing.
Yeah, obviously, and fit, stress-free clothing, everything that boils down for me at least to the pockets.
And lengths,
yeah,
and stretchable things. So, there's just a lot. And it really needs to be thought through thoroughly, tested on consumers, and then, go through the feedback loop across this.
And also sustainability is a growing concern nowadays. So how are you maintaining your product offerings sustainable, and also you're keeping your value chain sustainable in the long run?
Very important question, relevant question, but also I want to correct sustainability to say consciousness. India, overall apparel industry is not sustainable, to be very honest and fair. India and consumers are becoming more environmentally conscious, and that's the direction we need to take. So first thing I always say is that I would say that we are conscious brand, we are not a sustainable brand as yet. We are still way ahead of the curve in terms of how we execute and think about consciousness. We have consciousness integrated into our DNA of how we operate the organization, our value chain, wherever we could work through. Being the recycled paper, consuming, limiting various multiple shipments. There are tons of ways that we go through that. From a product portfolio perspective, I would say that we have not offered a lot more environmentally conscious clothing as yet, and that is a conscious commercial decision because consumers are excited about it, but not willing to pay for it as yet.
That's true. But when we are talking about brand growth, you've grown from FableStreet to now 2 more brands, and these whole 3 brands are now called FS Live. So even collaborations and partnerships are really important when it comes to brand growth. So can you share some notable collaborations that you have had in the past, or what you're planning for the future?
So we try to I first agree that collaborations are important. They are not the only source of growth, but become a critical aspect of who you stand for or what you stand for. The biggest and the most notable set of collaborations that we have done is, of course, bringing 3 celebrities on board. And we got, instead of 1, we got 3 celebrities on board. It was Sonakshi, it was Srinidhi, and it was Huma, because we stand for inclusivity and we also stand for real women. So approachability is a part of our DNA, and those are the collaborations that we've done, right? So and they do result in strong uplift and consumer relevance and love around this. The other meaningful collaborations that we try doing is we try to do a lot of connect with women at work, and then do more micro collaborations on that aspect. So so that's how we approach it. But collaborations have to be relevant, meaningful, because also what has happened is that there are way too much collaborations happening which are not relevant, and it's eventually resulting in consumer getting not interested in you anymore.
And also talking about collaborations and brand growth, even innovation is an important part when it comes to the success of any organization. So how do you keep up with innovation in your value chain, of course, in your product offerings, and also in your work culture?
I would say innovation is in our DNA. By design, and I don't have that slide right now in front of me, but our core building blocks are that product has to be distinctive and relevant. And for your product to stay relevant, if you cannot innovate on product, you will not last. What I launched the product with in 2016 and what we are doing today, if you would continue with the 2016 product, we would not be existing and we wouldn't be having this chat today. So that's how I would say. So I think product innovation is a critical aspect, and for us the other part is supply chain innovation, which I already talked about. we have to consistently be on our feet to figure out what next in that space. And it comes by training and coaching the team over time on this is who we are and what we need to stand for. It comes from consistently tracking on how are we being pegged against other brands or in the market in consumers' minds. And these two will be a real, clear enabler for you to be ensuring that you are consistently innovating.
We're having such interesting conversation, Ayushi. Now I really want to know, what is your differentiating factor from all the other brands?
Our differentiating factor from all the other brands at the back end on the organization front is twofold. We are the most efficient supply chain that can ever exist in the country, and a great team which is driven to make a mark. From a consumer point of view, it fits like nothing else.
It's brilliant to get those perspectives from an entrepreneur like yourself. But when we talk of entrepreneurs, now as we are wrapping up this conversation, I really want to touch upon my and also yours favorite topic that I came to know just before this conversation started. Like, entrepreneurs are often classified into entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. So what's your take on that?
You're touching a very wrong nerve here. So there are no female entrepreneurs, right? Or women entrepreneurs. Everyone's an entrepreneur, and it is completely in your mind, and that's how I look at it. That's how I would like to be called, and I hope you would too. And that's what it is. So I would not go beyond it.
So do you have any story to share when someone might have called you a female entrepreneur and you did not like it, might have irked you? Because
it always irks me.
Yeah.
You know, today is Women's Day. I'm getting messages all across the same, right? But in general, it always irks me. I have the pedigree, capability, and drive to be a great entrepreneur and build a great business. I don't want to be restricted by my gender, so it always irks me. And I don't want to be a place where I am just getting something X or Y just purely because of my gender. So that's the framing I take, and so it will always stay.
All right. So on that note, Ayushi, what advice would you like to give to future entrepreneurs who want to enter into D2C space or fashion retail space?
I would say two things. One, D2C and fashion and all these spaces are cluttered. It is not going to be very easy to scale up D2C until you have a very clear product value proposition that consumers can relate to. It is extremely expensive to build an online first brand in today's world. The world's changed. So, so be mindful, get your product market fit right, and that is critical, I would say. The second part is be ensure that you have the right team to enable you. It is not easy to build expertise very, very quickly, and the world's changing very fast. So it's important to do so.
All right. So these are the foundations: being mindful, keep a check on your product offering, and also you should have a right team before you start any business. On that note, Ayushi, it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching this episode. Stay tuned for more such episodes only on ET Studios presents Future Brands of India in association with ET Retail.